Apologize to her or you're finished, my father roared, his voice shaking the heavy oak walls of the library. Outside, 400 guests were drinking vintage champagne, celebrating his $40 billion merger. Inside, he was demanding I sign away my dead mother's legacy to his new wife, Monica. I looked him in the eye and said, no. He didn't argue. He didn't hit me. He simply placed his hand on the biometric panel by the door. The steel bolts slammed shut with a heavy thud. Then you stay here, he said through the intercom, until you learn submission. Before I tell you what he lost the moment he locked that door, drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? I want to see how far this story travels. Most people would panic if they were locked in a soundproof room while their family partied outside. They would bang on the heavy oak doors or scream until their throat bled. I didn't do either. I walked over to the mahogany desk, sat down in my father's leather chair, and spun it around to face the wall of monitors disguised as bookshelves. My name is Haley and I turned 30 last week. My father, Thomas, thinks he just grounded a rebellious daughter. He thinks he trapped a girl who refuses to get with the program. What he actually did was lock the chief architect inside the control room. He forgets that I built this room. I designed the security grid. I wrote the code for the Nexus AI that is currently evaluating his $40 billion merger. For 10 years I have been the ghost in his machine. For a decade I fell into what psychologists call the trap of normalized cruelty. It's a subtle, insidious thing. It doesn't start with a cage, it starts with a request. Just help us out this weekend, Haley. We can't afford a full-time engineer right now, but your family. It starts small. You work an 18-hour day and instead of a paycheck you get a pat on the head. You build a proprietary algorithm that saves the company millions, and instead of a bonus, you get told you're being a good team player. I let him convince me that my lack of a title, my lack of health insurance, and my lack of a salary was a noble sacrifice. I thought I was paying my dues to earn his love. I thought if I just made him rich enough he would finally look at me and see his daughter. But tonight I realized it wasn't an apprenticeship. It was a slow-motion robbery. The realization hit me 3 hours ago down in the ballroom. The gala was supposed to be a tribute to my mother, Eleanor. We were unveiling the new cancer wing at the hospital, funded by her estate. It was the only thing I had left of her. I stood there in my simple black dress, holding a glass of lukewarm water, watching the velvet curtains part. I expected to see the Eleanor wing in bronze letters. Instead, the spotlight hit the wall, and the crowd applauded for the Monica and Thomas Center. My mother's name had been chiseled off, replaced by the woman who made me apologize for existing. I looked at Thomas. He didn't even flinch. He raised his glass to Monica, beaming like a man who had successfully rewritten history. When I confronted him by the stage, shaking with a rage so cold it burned, he leaned in and whispered, "Monica is the future, Haley. Eleanor is the past. Don't be sentimental. It's bad for business." My brother Seth laughed. He stood there in a tuxedo that cost more than my car, sipping scotch, and laughed at the erasure of the woman who gave birth to us. They thought they broke me in that moment. They thought by erasing her name they were putting me in my place. But they didn't know that by destroying my hope, they had also destroyed the only thing keeping them safe: my loyalty. I looked at the monitors humming in the dark library. The live stream showed Thomas walking up to the podium, preparing to announce the merger that was built entirely on my intellectual property. He thought he was the king of the castle. He forgot that he was standing on a trapdoor and I was the one holding the lever. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dim library, casting a pale blue light across the mahogany desk. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't hitch. There is a specific kind of calm that settles over you when you finally stop hoping for a miracle and start doing the math. I didn't need to hack into the system. Hacking implies you are an intruder trying to break a lock. But I wasn't an intruder. I was the locksmith. I built the walls. I poured the digital foundation. I knew where every key was hidden because I was the one who hid them. On the screen, a window popped up asking for authentication. I didn't hesitate. I typed in my credentials. Not Haley the daughter, but Admin Prime. The system welcomed me instantly. It recognized its creator even if my father didn't. On a secondary monitor, I pulled up the live stream of the gala. The camera panned over the ballroom, capturing the sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. Zoomed in on Thomas. He was standing at the podium holding a microphone, looking every inch the benevolent titan of industry. He was smiling that practiced, charming smile that had fooled investors for 40 years. Beside him, Monica was preening, soaking up the applause for a building she didn't pay for and a legacy she didn't earn. Tonight, Thomas boomed through the speakers, his voice tinny in the quiet library, we usher in a new era. A $40 billion merger that will change the face of technology forever. I watched him lie. I watched him sell a future that belonged to me. And then I looked back at my main screen. I opened the command terminal. The cursor blinked, waiting. I wasn't going to destroy the servers. That would be petty and frankly criminal. I wasn't an arsonist. I was a repo man. I was simply coming to collect an unpaid bill. I typed in 3 words. Code repossession protocol. It was a script I had written 3 years ago, on a night when Thomas had forgotten my birthday to take Monica to Paris. Back then I told myself it was just a safety measure, a just-in-case backup. Deep down I think I always knew this moment would come. I hit enter. A progress bar appeared on the screen. Green, steady, relentless. It wasn't deleting files. It was encrypting them. It was revoking the license keys. It was pulling the consciousness out of the Nemesis AI and locking it away in a private cloud server that only I could access. 20%. Thomas was raising a glass of champagne. To the future, he shouted. 40%. The crowd cheered. Seth clapped his hands, looking smug. They had no idea that the intellectual property they were celebrating was evaporating into the ether. 60%. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It was the feeling of a heavy weight being lifted. For 10 years I had carried this company on my back. I had fixed every bug, patched every hole, and smoothed over every one of Thomas's reckless promises. I was tired. 80%. And now, Thomas said, gesturing to the massive screen behind him, let me demonstrate the power of Nexus. 99%. He turned to the screen. He expected to see a dazzling display of data visualization. He expected the AI to greet the audience. 100%. Transfer complete. I closed my laptop. The silence in the library was absolute, but on the monitor the chaos was just beginning. I stood up, walked to the heavy oak door and placed my hand on the electronic lock. The system chirped. A friendly, obedient sound. The steel bolts retracted. I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I was the CEO of a company of one and I was stepping out to address the shareholders. Thomas froze. The microphone dropped from his hand, hitting the stage with a screech of feedback that made 400 people flinch. Behind him, the 60-foot screen wasn't displaying the sleek blue neural network of Nexus. It was a wall of solid, angry crimson. In the center, white text pulsed like a heartbeat. License revoked. Asset retrieved. A gasp rippled through the crowd. I watched from the balcony of the library as the investors pulled out their phones. The panic was instantaneous. The stock ticker on the side monitors, which had been climbing all night, suddenly flatlined and then nosedived. The whispers started low and grew into a roar. The code is gone. It's a shell company. Sell. Sell everything. I walked out of the library, the heels of my boots clicking against the marble floor. I felt light, weightless. I had done it. I had taken back what was mine. I started toward the grand staircase, intending to walk out the front door and never look back. But as I reached the landing, the heavy oak front doors burst open. I didn't see the night sky. I saw blinding blue and red strobe lights. Sirens wailed, cutting through the murmurs of the gala. A squad of uniformed officers stormed into the foyer, hands on their holsters, scanning the room with aggressive precision. Freeze, one of them shouted, pointing directly at me. I stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This wasn't part of the plan. Thomas looked up from the stage. The panic on his face vanished, replaced by a look of terrifying, predatory calm. He straightened his tie and pointed a shaking finger at me. There she is, he yelled, his voice projecting without the microphone. That's the woman who sabotaged our servers. Arrest her. The officers swarmed up the stairs. Haley Vance, you are under arrest for corporate sabotage, grand larceny, and theft of trade secrets. I felt the cold steel of handcuffs snap around my wrists. The crowd watched, their shock turning into judgment. Of course, their eyes said, the ungrateful daughter. The criminal. Thomas walked up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time until he stood right in front of me. He wasn't ruined. He was gloating. He leaned in close so only I could hear him over the chaos. Did you really think you could outsmart me, Haley? He sneered, reeking of expensive scotch. You're my employee. That code is mine. You didn't liberate anything. You stole $40 billion from your own father. The familiar panic tightened around my throat. He had planned this moment, waiting for me to break so he could brand me a criminal and cage me for good. You'll never leave, he said, smiling. You belong to this company. You belong to me. The officer pushed me forward. Let's go, ma'am. Thomas thought he had won. He saw a thief, not a trap he'd set for himself. Wait, I said calmly. I have one question for the victim. Am I your employee? Did I build that code as an employee of this company? He laughed loudly. Of course you are. 10 years. Everything you made belongs to me. Good, I said. I needed that on the record. I spoke a command. The screen behind him lit up, not with code but a document. An IRS Form 1099 NEC. My name as recipient. His company as payer. It proves you classified me as an independent contractor, I said. No benefits. No equity. No payroll taxes. And no IP assignment. I turned to the officers. Under U.S. copyright law, contractors own their work unless rights are assigned in writing. He never gave me a contract. Thomas went pale. I didn't steal anything, I said. Nexus is mine. I've just terminated your free use of it. The officer unlocked the cuffs. This is a civil matter. We can't arrest someone for taking their own property. Phones rang across the ballroom as the stock ticker finally updated, down 60% in minutes. Investors rushed to sell. Brooks Tech was suddenly an empty shell. Thomas stared at the screen in horror. This is a mistake. It's due diligence, I said. Something you skipped. He staggered toward me. Please. I'll give you shares. The title. The company. We're family. I looked at him without emotion. We aren't family. According to your own tax filings, I'm just a vendor, and you're a client in breach. I didn't destroy it, I added. I just stopped holding it up. The officers stepped aside. I walked past Thomas without looking back. Weeks later, investors sued. Courts followed the paperwork. Monica filed for divorce. Seth texted once. I ignored it. I kept Nexus. 2 months later, I launched Eleanor Tech, ethical AI for healthcare built properly, named properly. Now I work from a noisy coffee shop, not a silent prison. The code runs clean because I built it. It belongs to me because I claimed it. If you've ever had to remind someone of your worth, remember this. Loyalty isn't a debt. And underpaying the people who build your world is the most expensive mistake of all.